If I were to ask you how often you have one-on-one meetings with your team, what would your answer be? If your answer is once a month or less, I'm here to tell you that I think you're doing a disservice to your team. So let's talk about what a good one-on-one meeting structure looks like for you and your team today. I have a good friend that works for a company that does a lot of really good stuff for their team members. But one of the things that they really don't do well is have good one-on-one meetings. And so what happens is they have 2 or 3 people doing the same type of work that really one person could be dealing with. And sometimes they find that, one department is super busy while another department is completely like waiting for things to do. So they miss out on lots of opportunities for prioritization and those kinds of things, right? One of the biggest benefits of having a good one-on-one meeting with your team members is to really make sure that they're working on the things that are going to move the needle for them, for you, for your company, for the team, all of the above, right? The whole point of having a good one-on-one meeting is to make sure that everyone's working on the right things at the right time, at the speed, and all those things. One of the biggest benefits of having a good one-on-one structure with your team is that you get a really good opportunity to really know what's going on, set direction, set prioritization, and all of those things. Those are all really important. And if you aren't doing that with a organized one-on-one cadence, I think you're missing out. So today we're going to be talking about what a good one-on-one structure looks like, some of the things to talk about, and how to build your culture within your organization through your one-on-one meetings. Every employee will benefit from having a good one-on-one meeting, your strong performers and your weaker performers. So don't just make this be a strong performer only thing or a weak performer only thing. You want to make sure you have solid one-on-one meetings. And my preference from a cadence perspective is to do a weekly one-on-one meeting. I like having relatively short meetings, somewhere between 15 minutes and a half hour, and do them every single week. That way, if you miss one, not the end of the world, you just pick it up the following week. If you do a one-on-one meeting every other week or once a month or something and you miss one, you either have to reschedule or you just don't meet for a month. I think that's not a great place to be. So now that you have this cadence figured out, what are you going to talk about? I like to have employees come with a good 90% of the content. I want them to bring me what they're working on, what's going on in their world, how can I help them, how can I help them prioritize, and those kinds of things, more than, me asking them what's the status of this, what's the status of that, all those kinds of pieces, because oftentimes when that happens, it can feel like an interrogation, and you definitely don't want your meetings to feel like an interrogation. So bring forth, a little bit of content from you, but really the employee should be driving most of that. You don't know what's going on until they share it with you, and then help them prioritize what they're working on for that week, right? That's a really important piece. Another problem with this one-on-one stuff is that if you have these regular meetings and you're checking in frequently, you can share what's going on a little bit, especially if there's any kind of performance issues before it comes review time, right? The last thing you want to do in your employee reviews is to shock them with something brand new, right? There should be no brand new information in your employee review, especially if it's something to do with their performance, because that's not a good place to be. If you have these regular one-on-one meetings, you can share what's going on, they can ask you questions, and you can have a lot more productive conversations, and then your reviews become just that, a review. You do a quick check-in, what's happened over the last 6 months, a year, however long the review period is, and then you plan for the future, right? That is the power of a really good employee review, but it's really hard to do that if you don't have good one-on-one meetings. So if you talk about trying to have the employee bring things forward, you might wonder, what happens if my employee isn't bringing that content forward? They're not asking me questions, they're not preparing for these meetings, and a couple things are going to have to happen for that to get solved. And the first piece is you really want them to understand that this is their opportunity to share with you and be transparent about all those things. I've often found that employees frequently don't have good one-on-ones at previous jobs, and so you asking them to come prepared to talk about what's going on in their world and those kinds of pieces feels foreign. So it might take a little bit of time, a few different meetings to kind of get them up to speed, but the whole point of this is you really want to drive forth the culture of transparency and have them share with you and help them with prioritization, all those kinds of things, and make that be part of your ongoing culture. If it's just an employee or two that are having trouble sharing and being transparent about what's going on and asking for help and prioritization, all those kinds of things, that might just be a hangover from previous bad experiences at other workplaces. So it might take some time to build that trust, and that's okay. Now, on the flip side, if many employees or all of your employees aren't used to it, or you're trying to change the whole thing, you may have a bigger lift, because if you're changing the whole piece of it, they're going to have to kind of get used to what that change looks like. So it's important that you understand the scope of who's having trouble with it. And if you're having trouble with that and it's more than a couple employees, you may want to consider doing an exercise like a 4 helpful lists, where you ask about what's working well, what's right versus what's wrong, what's confused, and what's missing, and have that conversation and brainstorming session about what they're seeing and what their view of the whole process is. That will bring forth a lot of what's going on. One tip as it relates to the 4 helpful lists or any kind of brainstorming exercise like that is not your job and not your time to defend what's going on. You don't want to get in that back and forth forth defending because you're going to shut your team down or they're not going to share with you for sure. Your job as a facilitator for those 4 helpful list types of exercise is really to ask clarifying questions, take notes, and listen. That's it. Not defend, not respond, just ask clarifying questions, take notes, and listen. Then take all of those notes and all of that experience, think about it, come up with a plan, and share that plan back with your team, right? If you do it that way, you're going to get a lot better results from those types of brainstorming exercises. With all of this, we talked about cadence, right? Once a week if you can, every other week if you must. We talked about what the content looks like, right? You want the employee to bring most of the content. You can bring a little bit, but don't make it a interrogation. We talked about being transparent and trying to set priorities and trying to set the employees so they understand what their reviews look like. And then 4, really trying to bring that culture of transparency across all of the areas within your business, I think is going to set you up for success as it relates to some of this leadership stuff. And understanding that leadership is not a once and done type of topic, right? It's a lot like legal. It's a lot like finance. This will be an ongoing conversation that we have, but I think it's important that we start somewhere. So one thing I would love it if you would do for me is click on that click on that subscribe button, help me out because it helps me be more visible in YouTube. In the meantime, I'll keep working on these videos, hopefully bringing you some value. So thank you for coming on this ramble with me, and I hope to see you on the next one.